Hi, friends. Welcome to Charlie and Steve's Watch Stuff, where today we are watching The Craft. And it's embarrassing how many times I had to practice The Craft before I was getting it right. I was definitely calling this movie something very different as we got into the preparation for this movie. But anyway, joining me as always for the spooky month of spooky movies is my good friend, Charlie Peppers. How are you doing today, Charlie?
Doing fan-damn-tastic. Also, what were you calling it?
I think I was calling it like the shoot, it was definitely a C word that I was, not that C word, relax, but it was definitely the wrong name, but I've got The Craft in my brain now, so maybe it was The Coven, I don't know, something close, and it was something
witchy. The Covenant, the male version.
Yeah, yeah, but that movie's way down the line for sure. And speaking of witchy, we do have another guest today. We want to welcome Kevin Gadzelinski onto the podcast. He's the host of Words of the Witches, which is a charmed extended lore podcast. I can't wait to hear what that means. Well, I already heard what that means, but I want all of you to hear what that means. And he also is the host of Solving for X, which covers all things X-Men. Ever heard of it? If you listen to this podcast, you've definitely heard of it. He's covered X-Men in the 90s animated series, a little bit of X-Men 97, and as we're about to talk about, a little bit of X-Men Evolution, that little show that Charlie loves more than anything else in this world. Maybe The Craft is up there, though, with X-Men Evolution. It's definitely a tough fight. But Kevin, welcome to Charlie and Steve Watch Stuff. Thanks for taking some time to join us on this little podcast of ours.
Yay, thank you. This is super exciting. I've, been kind of following on the sidelines, so it's now nice to be a part of it.
Yeah, love that for us. Absolutely,
I want to just sing Kevin's phrases for a second. Every time you post an update on your podcast or just on any project that you're doing in general, I feel like I see your inner child shining through, and it makes me so happy. I'm like, look at Kevin. Like, you just have no idea. Like, I'm always thinking we would have been friends when we were kids just because of how deep you go in on your interests. That's the same way that I go deep on my interest. And I want all of our listeners to know that he just made the most incredible charmed musical. And if you want to talk about it for a second, of course, baby. Since I was a little boy in 2001, have been dying for there to be a charmed musical. And
me too.
Me too. I was like, what would they sing about? What would they get up to? Because I think some of the emotions run really high in that show. And Charmed, like, I like to say I love Buffy and I love Charmed, but I consider them two different entities. But what inspired you to make a Charmed musical, Kevin?
Well, like you, I always resented the fact that there was never a musical episode. Like, even Seventh Heaven got a musical episode. So I'm like, come on, where's my Charmed musical? And, for one of my podcast episodes, we did one of the novels called Pied Piper. And at the end, I had an activity where my guest and I talked about, songs that would happen just for fun, if Charmed ever became a musical. Who would sing them? What would the song be called? What kind of song would it sound like? And just kind of spit rolling. And one of our listeners was a musician, heard that, wrote us demos based off the songs we made, and sent them to me. And after I got those demos, I'm like, okay, well, we have to make it happen. Now that you showed me what's possible, I started writing a script. He worked on the songs, and we came up with a thing, and we made our own little radio musical on the podcast, cast it and everything. It was amazing.
Incredible. Oh my God, I didn't know that you did that. And I'm sorry to say I've never watched Charmed before, so maybe this is my cue to go and watch it. But what a job to go and go Scrubs musical on a show like that. That's so cool. Yeah. And you can find this on the internet right now if people wanted to go and see it for themselves. All right, cool. Well, that's going to be all up in the show notes. So if you're listening to this, and I'm not even going to be mad if you pause the podcast to go and listen to a Scrubs. It's just how the musical episode. Go and listen to a Charmed musical as done by Kevin and crew. That's so cool. And so just kind of rolling into that, talk a little bit about your show, Words of the Witches. It's like a Charmed extended lore podcast. You just kind of mentioned one of the novels that you're again, things that I am learning right now. I guess this is you learn something every day. Talk about your podcast about Charmed and that, what the extended lore means, because I don't think you hear that super often for a show that isn't super space sci-fi, push up your glasses nerd sort of thing.
People aren't always aware, but there were 43 Charmed novels that came out starting in 1999. Wow. Then there was season 9 and a season 10 comic books that continued the series after the show ended. We cover all of those issue by issue, book by book, and we break it down for those who may not have access to them. And we talk about, how they relate to the show, if they're canonical, could they fit in there? So it's very exciting. And my goal was just to cover everything under the sun if it's charmed and published. So currently we're covering the guidebooks. Next we're going to be covering the official magazines. But the musical, I actually put between the comics because I figured that was a great way to get all 4 sisters involved without interfering with lore that's already established. So I used what came before, what came after, and kind of wedged it in between there. And yeah, super exciting.
Brilliant. Very cool.
Such a good listen, because I think that a lot of people sleep on how deep the lore of Charmed is. It really is a intergenerational family saga, if you really look at it. And the family saga starts all the way back, not even on Melinda Warren, but like Charlotte, her mom, who gave birth to her. And then there was a huge legacy. But before we dig into the podcast, I wanted to fly a theory by you. Have you ever heard the theory that the reason the 3 cousins, 2 of the 3 cousins have elemental powers is because they're actually descendants from Paige's past life, the Enchantress?
Evil Enchantress?
Yeah, the evil Enchantress. And I think that now thinking that, I'm like, no wonder Paige's soul got recycled. Because my favorite thing about the Charm mythos is the reincarnation that happens. I wish that they would have played around with that a lot more. I love that they were cousins and then they were sisters. And my head theory is that Phoebe's daughters are the reincarnated souls of Prue, Patty, and Grams, and that they're the new Charmed ones. That's kind of what I choose to believe. And Patty's definitely in the middle, but
PJ Peyton Parker, which you don't get to see until the comics. So there you go.
See it till the comics. It's so fantastic. But what's your favorite? Have you heard that theory? What's your favorite fan theory?
Oh, I never heard that one. That's really cool. And I like it because even though, Phoebe's past life, Pearl Russell, was noted as the bad one, none of them were very respectable people. They're all very cold and kind of just like, so I feel like they're all had that little evil inclination in them, which would make sense. Yeah, favorite fan theory, though. Oh, God, what did I think? I like the idea that Ames was going... Yeah, I'm going back over here. Going after the elders, going after the White Lighters, so that he can gain access to the ghosts. Because in the upper regions, there's 2 different sections of the upper regions. There's the elders domain, and then there's the spirit domain. And they don't usually cross, but they do have communications. So I feel like Ames is trying to get the powers like orbs so he can go feed off souls and use them to gain more power and use them as, a currency of sorts. So, yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Steve, thank you for letting us go down that rabbit hole. But Ames...
No, this is exactly how I understand now how other people feel when I find someone else that loves something like Kingdom Hearts and we just start kind of talking in our own language. And that was beautiful. I loved it.
Yeah. But let's dive in. I got a lot of shit to say. Shall we begin?
Beautiful. Well, we're going to keep the witchy vibes going. Of course, you can listen to Words of the Witches and Solving for X, which stay tuned after we're done talking about the craft. We're definitely going to roll up our sleeves and talk a little bit of X-Men before we go, because how could we not? Little fun fact, Charlie, I don't know if I've told you this, and I'm a fitness instructor for a job, and anytime I make people do alternating X-pikes, I will say, sing the X-Men theme song to yourself, and I truly don't think many people get it, but every now and again I get a giggle, and it's good. And it makes me feel good about myself. Let's talk about this movie, which got my fitness going in a different way. That was inappropriate, but I'm going to keep it. This movie called The Craft, released on May 3rd, 1996, keeping those 1996 vibes going. Big year for scary movies, I guess. Screenplay by Peter Filardi and Andrew Fleming, directed by Peter Filardi, starring Robin Tunney, Fairuza Bulk, Nev Campbell, Rachel True, and Skeet Ulrich. And Charlie, this is the enthusiasm for this one has been at an all-time high for you, so I'm going to let you take our hands and guide us through this witchy adventure.
I would love to guide you through this witchy adventure. So, quick background, I was in elementary school when the trailer for The Craft came out, and what's really special about The Craft is that The Craft helped sculpt a lot of my sensibilities when it comes to media, film, and TV, because The Craft came out in 1996, then Buffy premiered the spring of 1997, then Charmed premiered, I believe, 1998. So it was just, I consider The Craft, Buffy, and Charmed the trifecta of, okay, I am drawn to stories that are about female underdogs just taking back their power. And I really love this movie for many reasons. I think that it does a lot of things well. I think that some parts of it have aged excellently. I think some parts of it, we'll get into that, but I'm going to get started. So the plot of our movie: 4 outcast teenage girls at a Los Angeles high school pursue witchcraft for their own gain and subsequently experience negative repercussions. Our first scene, it's the girls chanting. We see the titles of the film, and we're slowly pushing in on them at their altar. And we close in on Nancy, who I'm going to get into. I don't think Nancy is the villain. I think Nancy is the anti-hero of this movie. And I think that the movie gets a little confused about what it wants to do with her at the very end. But the fact that we push in on her and she looks up at the camera, the movie wants you to know who is the second protagonist in this movie, pretty much. So what are both your thoughts on Nancy?
I think she walks so Regina George could run. So you think you're really witchy?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I feel like this is a whole trend of those kind of movies. You got Jawbreaker 2 with Rose McGowan in there, which is very similar. So yeah, I feel like there might be, maybe she's very power hungry, but there might be, she probably got more than she realized, and maybe she has some regrets. Maybe she has some trauma of her own. So
Well, yeah, it's foreshadowing. I think she looks the most stereotypically like one of those like goth emo is into witchcraft sort of girls that you would have thought were in that 90s high school trope. I think, well, I mean, Neves Campbell is there for a very specific reason, which we'll get into. And then the other character, I don't remember her name off the top of my head, is like, she just looks normal to me, but like she's the one with the heavy eyeliner and the piercings and sort of looks like the most stereotypically like the person who would be into this kind of stuff.
she's the X-Men Evolution rogue.
Yes, she is
not wrong.
X-Men Evolution Rogue, which is why I fuck with her so heavy. But let's get into her counterbalance. Nancy's counterbalance is Sarah Bailey, a troubled teenage girl with unusual abilities, who we see moving from San Francisco to Los Angeles with her father and stepmother. An unhoused person breaks into their home, taunting Sarah with a snake. Sarah's mortified. So, Steve,
I'd like to point out that her problems with the unhoused people were not in San Francisco, so you can take your takes on. Thank you very much. It was in LA.
It was
okay?
LA. That was the movie.
The 90s
The
knew.
90s knew. I was like, the 90s knew that we were going to have a massive housing crisis. Though, like, I'm like, maybe because I used to be a community organizer focused in housing justice, whenever I see an unhoused person treated like a villain or like a vagrant, I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. That's insensitive. But I still did. I thought that it was a nice jump scare. Would you consider this the movie's first jump scare?
Yeah, I think so. And maybe it's not the fact that he's homeless that's terrible. Maybe it's more to have to do with his mental state.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe he's not quite all there, you know? So
stranger in your house with a snake, maybe not the best move for introducing yourself.
Yeah. It's like the Tom Riddle origin story. It was a lot.
Oh my God.
What was it doing the most?
do you know anything about the Chamber of Secrets?
I think he would like to. Nancy has entered the chat. She like turned around. It's like, All right. So moving on.
Right.
At school the next day, Sarah meets a trio of outcast girls who are rumored to be witches. Bonnie Harper bears burn scars from an auto accident. Nancy Downs lives in a trailer with her mother and abusive stepfather. And Rochelle Zimmerman is a black student who is subjected to racist bullying by a group of white girls. The girls worship a powerful earth deity they call Manan. All right, So I got a fun question for both of y'all. In high school,
Okay.
what would you say were you a Sarah? Were you a Bonnie? Were you a Rochelle? Or were you a Sarah? Like, where were you? Like, what was your high school personality?
I was a Bonnie. I was very shy. Like, I had my select group of friends, but like I had to warm up to people first, and so like I'm just like I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I have to say Rochelle only because she was the only one doing anything generally sporty in this in all of these scenes. I was one of those sporty kids, although I did do the theater and the music as well. Dealt with a decent amount of bullying. Obviously, it wasn't blatantly racist bullying. That was shocking. I was not. I mean, I should have been ready for it considering that this movie was in 1996. But right when they started like yelling it in the middle of the pool, I was like, all right. Cool, we're just gonna like really hammer home that this is a bad person and this is how we're doing
No,
it.
Marsha. No, Marsha.
Fantastic. Like, please stop saying that. But yeah, I don't know if I would be called your question is popular. Definitely not a popular kid, that's for sure.
In high school, I would say I don't know how to put myself into one of those 4 boxes. I didn't really have a clique. I kind of floated between all of the cliques and did my own thing. And I was definitely nerdy. I was in the closet, but I think I got bullied a little bit, but I evaded like a lot more of it just because I was, I don't know, quirky or like fun and could like talk to anybody. So like I was a nerd, but I was like, oh, hey, what's up? What you doing? You know? So I think it was kind of on the outskirts, but like doing my own thing. So maybe like Rochelle with like some Sarah underpinnings.
You're like a puppy running from group to group.
Yes. Hey, hi. I was like, hi.
That's how you are at parties now. So
yeah, and it's giving that. So one of the characters I want to focus on is Rochelle, because I feel like Rochelle is the most underdeveloped character in the movie. She struggles with racism at school, but we never see what her home life looks like. We see what everybody else's home life looks like. And it's very interesting because in the script, Rochelle is dealing with an eating disorder. And that is something that we see her doing in the second scene of the movie. She eats a bunch of donuts at breakfast while her dad is really coming down hard on her. Like, okay, how many laps are you getting in the swim team? Are you moving up on the swim team? Who's your competition? You have to be fierce. You have to get in with the popular people. So I liked seeing in the script how hard Rochelle's dad was being on her. And I also liked this description that the script had for her family. It goes, an attractive, well-crafted, well-coiffed black mother is just finishing a pan of scrambled eggs in a very upscale kitchen. She moves to the tastefully decorated breakfast nook, which contains an extremely handsome black family. Father, brothers, sisters, and Rochelle Mack, 16, model pretty and thin. She almost makes her familiar gray Catholic school uniform look glamorous. And I like this intro to the character. I think that the group could have done with having another strong personality inside of it, but I don't know if it quite would have worked. So on one hand, I'm annoyed that she's underdeveloped, but at the same time, I'm wondering if the film had enough bandwidth to really go as deep with her and Bonnie as they would have wanted. What are your thoughts on Rochelle as a character? Like, what do you walk away from this movie thinking about her?
You know, I've always liked her. It's cool to know that all this stuff that was cut from the script would have been interesting. But at the same time, I kind of was into her more because we didn't know much. I was always looking at her and just wondering. And so maybe I don't know if that's just me, but I was more attracted to her because I didn't know much. I'm like, she's so mysterious. So I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they just like looked at everything that they had, and they thought that just the racist bullying was enough to be her motivation for wanting to do the way, because they're trying to set up the three characters' motivations for doing the spell and calling on Manon as they're about to do. So maybe they thought that they were on the verge of making her too busy compared to the other three, and of course, again, 90s, I'm sure they're like, oh, it'll be fine if we just slim this down a little bit. I feel like it was at the juxtaposition of Hollywood and the vision, you know?
Yeah. I think Rochelle is definitely, I agree with you, Kevin, and I agree with you, Steve. She's definitely a character that there's a lot to discern and a lot to learn about. I think that she has two very subtle, shining moments in the movie, and one of them is a special effect that not a lot of people realize is a special effect. After she sees the girl's hair falling out in the shower and it's getting really bad,
mirror?
Yeah, in the mirror, she looks at her reflection and her reflection looks away from her.
Movie.
And I thought that was very interesting because of the scene that we'll get to momentarily of all the girls saying what they want from the coven. Rochelle says that she doesn't want to hate the people who hate her. And I think it's very interesting that she frames it like that, because I think only someone who has a good soul would be aware of the fact that they don't want to get corrupted or eaten from the inside through the outside through how people are treating them. So I think that she's a good person who's finding herself. And I think the second moment that she has in the movie really supports that. There's a moment where they're all driving in the car and Nancy and Sarah are in the front and Bonnie and Rochelle are in the back, and Nancy kind of in this throwaway line is like, stop trying to win them over. They don't think. And Rochelle actually responds to that. She's like, bitch. And I thought, oh,
right,
interesting. She has something to say about that. It's like, no, wait a minute. I do have thoughts. But then she kind of fades into the background again and kind of goes with it. And that moment I found so interesting, and I only realized it this last watch.
Mm. Yeah, I just think, again, that's just so Hollywood for her to be the character that gets the first clipping. It's like we're in horror month, like the old trope that the black character dies first. I think in this case, a little bit, this character gets some of their exposition decreased because maybe there was a mandate to do so, or they just decided it wasn't as interesting as the storylines of the white girls, the headliners. That's my cynical way of looking at it. That's just how I feel about things these days.
No, I feel that. I agree with you, and it's a yes and. Yes, that's more prone to happen to
everything else.
You just said. But also, I believe that good writing isn't just dialogue. I believe that it's behavior. And yes, a lot of her dialogue and her backstory got cut, but in her behavior, I think Rachel True is an underrated actress, because just seeing her facial expressions and just seeing the way that she takes in information, I think that she is an important person in this group, because you have Nancy, who is the most powerful personality, and then you have Bonnie, who is very shy and very wallflower-like, and I want to talk about Bonnie in a second. Then you have somebody like Rochelle, who, if things were a little different, she would be a popular girl. She's bubbly. She's like, oh, hi. She's the one who apologizes for Nancy. She's like, oh, Nancy can just be like that. Don't worry about it. Also, whose house does Sarah run to after she gets SA'd? Later in the movie, it's Rochelle's house.
Yeah.
I think that also says a lot.
I think there's a lot of subtle I want to say there's you're right, there's a lot of subtle things that Rochelle does that make her magnetic, and I think that's why I was always drawn to her, because she does little things that make you just want to know more, and you really kind of feel for her and like her.
You do.
Yeah,
I think she's a sweetheart. I think she should have had more of a mind of her own, but I would be friends with her. Also, she's one of the only black people I'd be like, hi. So moving on, popular jock Chris Hooker shows interest in Sarah, which she reciprocates. When Bonnie observes Sarah levitating a pencil in class, she and the other outcast girls are convinced that she can complete their coven as the fourth, completing an air, water, earth, fire circle and making them all powerful.
Can I just say how fucking wild it is that she decided to levitate a pencil in the middle of her crowded class? Like, what do you expect? That's you asking for somebody to see you. Yeah,
Vertical.
like, what are you doing? Absolutely insane move.
I love this scene, and I also want to talk about Skeet Ultridge. Is it Ultridge?
Probably Ulrich. Or Ulrich, whatever.
I'm just going to say Skeet with his...
Call him Skeet, motherfucker.
Skeet. Oh, yeah, he can do a few things to me the way he looked in this film. Not the character, just the actor. He's so damn sexy until we start seeing until we start seeing how he behaves. Then I'm like, So, interesting thing about this character, I think that love spells in this world, in the world of the craft, love spells kind of take infatuation and warp it into obsession. I think, one, that the performance that Skeet does in this movie is so good because we see so many different layers of this character, and in the beginning, it's mostly through looks. Like, this is somebody who is desperately trying to fit a status quo in school. I think my favorite bit of acting from Skeet in this movie is the look that he gives Sarah when Sarah says that she doesn't want to go home with him. And it's such a look of, I'm feeling a lot of intense emotions coming up and none of them have anything to do with you, but I'm going to throw you under the bus because I don't know how to talk about everything that I'm feeling right now. I thought that was just a very interesting moment. What did you both think of that moment when they were making out and then he was like, you want to come back to my place? And she said,
Well, I'm sure no one's ever said no to him before in his life.
And he's probably a result of the toxic social standards of men, you know, like, I can't show emotions. I can't have anything. So he's very out of touch with his own feelings.
Come and watch me play football.
Yeah. He has an entitlement that he's just given by birth. And so it's having all that thrown at him, and the expectancy is you know, shattering some of those.
Yeah, there was so much palpable, like, how dare you? And I mean, as he was walking away, seemingly cool with it, I was like, he wasn't cool. Like Arrested Development narrator voice, he was not cool with it.
Yeah, and I think the way that this movie talks about the fundamental truth of balance in life is also beautiful. I think, did Chris get what he dished out times 3? Yes. I think that Sarah casting that on him was his karma, built up of just disrespecting so many young women in school. But I think that the flip side of karma is also true. Like, if you were playing the hand that dishes out bad energy or bad karma, you can dish that out, but it's going to come back onto you. And I think this is where the movie's message gets a lot muddled, because I don't think that anyone deserves to be assaulted or violated. So the fact that the movie said, oh, Sarah cast this love spell, so her punishment is him trying to force himself onto her, I don't know if I feel comfortable with the film's reading of that. I think that's where then the film's message gets a little muddled, and I choose to just chalk that up to bad writing. But yeah, I do really enjoy what they play around with in the Chris character here.
Karma is a witch putting love spells on me.
Maybe. I don't know.
Do you understand that reference, Charlie? That was a very white reference I just made. That was a Taylor Swift lyric that I just changed a little bit.
Taylor Swift is a white woman? Taylor Swift is white?
She is the porcelain goddess. Okay, wait, is that white? Is porcelain white? I was just trying to think of the whitest thing possible.
It's not just white. It's that white gold, that Michelle Pfeiffer.
It's that white.
So it's sparkling,
it sparkles.
Shimmering, splendid,
Yes.
shiny, shimmering, splendid.
Yeah,
absolutely.
As the girls walk home from school, Sarah is harassed by the same unhoused guy who broke into her house. I don't know if he was following her. This was really creepy. and he tries to scare her with the snake again. I don't know if he has a snake on the sidewalk, but when he chases after Sarah, he is immediately hit by a car. The girls believe their combined will caused it to happen, which strengthens their bond. It is also revealed that Sarah once attempted suicide. So this is where the meat of the movie starts to kick in. I love anything about female friendship, and I think this is definitely the craft walked so Mean Girls could run. This is there's 4 of them, there's 4 of the Mean Girls clique. I love a lot of these early scenes, and I particularly like if you just watch how Nancy's attitude towards Sarah shifts from scene to scene. I just want to know, do you think that Nancy genuinely liked Sarah?
Maybe not right away. I think she was interested. She had her interest peaked. But I think she did start to have a connection with her. She started to, and they have lots of moments of their bonding, where they're, throwing popcorn at each other, playing light as a feather, stiff as a board. And there's all those experiences that really solidified their friendship. So there was something real there. There had to be.
I don't like this scene, and I don't know why. So I was kind of quiet while we were talking about the unhoused person, because I was waiting till now to bring it up. I don't know why he's in the movie. We don't get any explanation as to why he's there, why he has the snake. We kind of get why snakes matter a little bit, because snakes show up later in a pretty wild way, but there isn't really any connection between him and Manon, him and the witchcraft, him and the magic. He's just there to be someone that we recognize from earlier, and then he's just dead. And then we never hear anything about it ever again. And that's somehow their connection to the witchcraft, which I feel like you could have just done by the fact that she was spitting a fucking pencil into a desk, and then they go and play Levitate Rochelle, I think 2 scenes later. So I don't know why it was there. There was no point to it other than to create trauma, in my opinion. So I just was very confused about the unhoused person's inclusion in general.
And the way that the screenplay described him was pretty egregious. They were greasy dreadlocks, and I paused at that point. I was in bed reading and kind of half paying attention, and your boy froze. I was greasy dreadlocks. I'm the fuck you trying to say? The fuck you trying to say, screenwriter? But
what do you mean, you people?
What do you mean, you witches? What do you mean? But I digress. But yeah, that was very palpable in the writing of it. I think that Nancy did like Sarah. I think that exactly how their relationship is going to go, in that chef's kiss of a reaction shot where Sarah comes up to them and Kim, and she's like, hey, can I sit with you guys? My favorite shot in the movie is just that non-verbal 3 shot of all 3 of the girls looking at her. Neve Campbell, you can't even see her fucking face. She looks like Violet from The Incredibles. She looks like Violet. She literally is like this. Yeah. That's why, she's like this. And you see Rochelle just kind of looking at Sarah like she wants to be like, oh, hi. But she doesn't quite know how to react. And you see fucking Nancy completely icing her out, because I think Nancy just looks at Sarah and thinks, oh, you're one of these bitches who's been bullying me my entire life. You have money. Your uniform's cleaner than mine. I don't like you. But here's the thing. I think had the writing been different, we could have had scenes of them going deeper with each other, because of the scene where Nancy sees Sarah's scar and she's like, Pump Rock, you're intense. I like you. I'm intense. Let's talk. I would have loved more conversations just one-on-one about them just talking about life instead of witchcraft, because I think Nancy is an addictive personality, and I think that how she shows up in friendship is she either doesn't fucking care for you, or when she does care for you, she goes deep. She definitely strikes me as one of those people who's nothing or all in. And I think that if we would have gotten more scenes of them bonding, the scenes of them in conflict would have been a little bit juicier, almost on a Buffy and Faith level of it's intense because y'all used to love each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, this movie, it's so great. What do you think of the moment. Like, if you were Sarah in this moment and Nancy sat down and she starts talking about Manon and how he fills you up and makes everything melt away, would you have been fucking terrified?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Jesus?
So I have to go over the pronunciation because don't they say Manon in the show? They like make it like French.
Yeah, they like put an accent on that shit.
Yeah. So I'm like, wait, I've never heard it said like
French
Manon before.
Fuck off.
So yeah.
Manon?
Because they're
Manon.
Just don't. So just don't close it off.
yeah. Maybe it's because
funny.
they're
Whoops.
in a Catholic school, so they pronounce it Manon.
Yeah.
Like there's nuns.
Oh my god. Yeah, that was a fun juxtaposition. I just think it sounds like someone who's way too into Jesus talking about Jesus. It's like those people that are having convulsions on those videos in those like deep South Baptist churches. That's what it reminded me of. But like just the devil instead.
Yeah.
So
One and the same.
I'm like curious. You're a little intense for me. Can we like dial it back a little? So I probably would be a little freaked. I would definitely be intrigued. I'd definitely be like, curious about what she's talking about, but I would also be freaked out because she's going way too heavy on it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if you're sitting in the room, you're probably already ready to look for what she's about to say. So
Yeah.
I'm sure Sarah was ready for it, especially, considering
It's like it's her.
spins
It's
pencils.
Nancy.
Yeah. She can make things move with her brain.
Yeah. Also, clock the look that Nancy gives Sarah when Sarah's like, "Oh, I make things happen by myself all the time," and Nancy's like, "Get out of here," and she gives her a very like jealous look. This actress is so good. I think 3 things are happening with her. Can I trust this person? I think I like certain things about this person outside of the witchcraft piece. Then third, is this bitch more powerful than me? I think you're just seeing her switch between all 3 of those modes the entire movie. And if you just look at how she's looking at Sarah within any given scene, you know exactly where she is. Fairuza Balk is so fucking good. She's so talented. I don't know if it's the editing. I don't know if it's the directing. I don't know if she was like drinking like something in her coffee, but like just as a director, just seeing all of her modes, I find it to just be a masterclass in acting, her performance in this movie.
And her look in general almost seems otherworldly. She has that very unique look in everything she does, so it's very cool.
Right. I completely agree. After a date with Chris, Sarah is upset that he spread a false rumor that they had sex. Later, Sarah goes on a field trip with the girls, who initiate her into their coven. Sarah casts a love spell on Chris. Rochelle cast a revenge spell on racist bully Laura Lizzie. Bonnie cast a spell for beauty, and Nancy cast a spell for power. What did y'all think of this scene?
So one quick thing about this is that you notice that, and I think it's a setup for what's about to come. The 3, I believe, Sarah and Rochelle and Bonnie all cast something very, very specific. Sarah wants, for some reason, Chris to be in love with her. Rochelle wants something very specific to happen to Laura Lizzie, her bully. Bonnie wants all of the issues with her skin to go away. She was through, very quick lore dump. She was through a horrific accident. She has horrible burns all over her body which is why she covers herself up so much. Nancy is just like, I want to be all powerful. I just want to be the most powerful bitch on the planet. That's very general, and it's very give me everything. And I think that's I got very excited about that. I hit my microphone. But yeah, exactly. But so I think it was a very interesting difference. It's something that I clocked right away. It was like the 3 of them asked for something very specific. Nancy's just like, I want everything. Give me all of it. Like, she's the person who gets 3 wishes, and her first wish is a million more wishes. And I think it plays to your point that you were saying before, that she's jealous of Sarah's power. So she wants to leapfrog her in some way without saying that.
Yeah, I'm going to make a very quick charm reference. And I know, Kevin, you'll get this. One of my favorite bits of world building and character work is with Phoebe, who seasons 1 and 2, Phoebe is my favorite character. Then season 3 is
She's great,
yeah, but in the very slept on episode, an animal pragmatism in this
Season 2, episode 13?
Yeah, season 2, episode 13. Oh my god, I love you. The part where the girls behind Phoebe are talking about a spell, And then Phoebe's ears perk up,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Oh no!"
She's like,
It's like, no, and
you gotta fix this.
she's like,
yeah.
no, move this over here, then move this over here, then do this. I wish that they would have done more moments like that in the show, just seeing the mathematics and the iambic pentameter of spell work.
Spells are an equation.
They are an equation, and Phoebe has such a mind for it because she's a writer. But the thing that she says that always stuck with me, it's like, no. You have to say what's lacking first, and then you have to say what you're hoping to gain while you're invoking the power. And that's something that I think Nancy was missing in her spell when she said, "Oh, I want to be all powerful." She's not saying what's lacking. I think that if she would have been more specific, if she would have said, "I want me and my mother to be free of this impoverished situation that we're in right now," I think that then she would have had more success with her spell. But yeah, it was she didn't seem to be grounded in what she was saying. But then I will say, if we're on Firuza Balk acting facial expression watch, she gives Sarah such a look of pure love in this scene. If you cut to her reaction shot where Sarah says, "I want to just love myself and allow myself to be loved by others," we immediately cut to Nancy, not a mistake, and Nancy just gives her a look like, "I know what you mean." And I think that was like which is why I do think that there was love between other people, because I think they saw each other. And I think in that scene, whether or not she was aware of it, Nancy was seeing Sarah and seeing like that they share a similar pain. But whereas Sarah was like looking inward, Nancy was just looking outward and kind of, which again speaks to her socioeconomic position. I think when you are drowning, you can't help but do this. I really love their slow motion power walk when they start getting everything. I've played that clip so many times.
That's Jawbreaker, that's Mean Girls, that's Heathers, that's everything.
It's everything. Yeah. It's so good.
It's X-Men Evolution.
It's X-Men Evolution.
Because X-Men Evolution takes the shot directly. They animate the shot in X-Men Evolution.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so good. I love that. Well, the spells are successful. Chris becomes infatuated with Sarah. Bonnie's scars on her back miraculously heal. Laura begins losing... Take my scars. Lennon, just take my scars. Laura begins...
Also, that we skipped over that, but just very quickly, that needle poking scene was fucking brutal. I actually, I had a hard time watching that. That was terrible. So good job by Neve Campbell being serious about it.
And I always thought about Holly. I always felt like Neve being Holly Marie Combs' sister or something. Because they seem so much alike.
They seem so much alike. And even their temperament, it really is, it's shocking. The kind of transformation she goes through in this movie. And they look at what Nancy's result for her spell is. It's that Nancy causes her stepfather to have a fatal heart attack, enabling her and her mother to cash in on his life insurance policy and move into a luxurious high-rise apartment. So seeing how all of the girls shift and transform after they get what they want is very, very interesting. I want to know, do you think that this is Nancy's heel turn into being a villain, this scene where she gives her stepdad a heart attack and doesn't even blink about it?
Well, if you go by charmed logic, yes, because it's always after the first kill that you become evil forever. So, yeah. It's definitely the start of something.
I mean, if there's a hero or an anti-hero that I can liken her to that I think I'm starting to think of right now, it's very Villainy. I think Eddie Brock got really into the power that the symbiote was giving him, and so it allowed to paint his actions, his attitude, how evil he was. And by the end of the movie, I don't know who's Spider-Man in this situation, but you're able to she's able to be defeated and talked out of the evil, the evilness that was inside of her gets removed. So it's very she catches the symbiote, but she doesn't hate it. She really likes what it does to her. And so she's embracing it and letting it make her more powerful.
I feel the same way about Nancy in this moment as I do feel about Carrie in the prom. It's kind of a good for her moment. Okay.
Good for you, killing all them kids. Fuck them kids.
It was like,
Fuck them kids.
he wasn't like a good person, so like it's hard to feel bad.
Yeah, it's really hard to feel bad. Nancy becomes power hungry and encourages the others to join her in a rite called Invocation of the Spirit, despite being warned against the spell.
To invoke the spirit.
That is very powerful. $25. I think that was actually the funniest. I don't know if that was supposed to be a joke.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was like a joke in the movie, but for her to be like, that's very dangerous. $25. Like, what the fuck?
Exactly.
This isn't.
You're like, how much? How much? 5 discount.
I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, it is so wild that is a book just hanging out in the open.
Yeah.
Like, Chris could have gotten that book and invoke the spirit. It's just so, like,
That should be in the back room. That's like a back room book.
I know, she didn't have nothing in that back room.
Yeah.
But like an altar. That was just, I found that to be hilarious.
Listen, if this lady could see the future, she knew that bookstores were dying very soon. So she's trying to sell anything she can, any way she can. It's just
Big summer blowout.
capitalism, man.
You know what she was doing?
Harness the powers of the dark arts. $25.
You know what she was doing in the back room? She was writing Harry Potter. I'm just gonna will J.K. Rowling out of existence.
Yeah.
Like, Lyria wrote the Harry Potter series in that back room. She's like, I got some.
I was like, don't turf this woman. Don't put that on her.
I know. On the cutting room floor, she tells Sarah, Avada Kedavra, these hoes. It's like, no. It's like, Sarah, baby girl, I got this spell for you. I got this spell. But, yeah, so silly. I think that in the scene, again, going back to the scene in the car where they just watch Nancy invoke the spirit, I think that we then get to see why Robin Tunney is such a good acting partner for Fairuza to have. If you look at the way that Sarah's emotions are never up here, they're always kind of hovering right here, all of her acting choices. And I don't know if that was the directing or if that was her instinctually. I don't think this movie would have worked if Sarah was also all the way up here with Nancy and it was a screaming match. I think what's so brilliant about Robin Tunney's performance, it's not the showy performance. It's not a showy performance. Fairuza is the one who's just fucking going for it. But Sarah, and I'd say that Sarah, if she were to have any element, it's earth. And in every scene, you see Sarah computing and taking in information and regulating herself and going, maybe we should think about what we're doing with this. Just being the most chill person. Like, the fact that of all people, Nancy wants to get mad at Sarah. It's like, Sarah just wants to vibe and hang. Like, Sarah's really chill.
She's grounded.
She's so grounded.
Yeah.
Didn't want to do anything. She was just such a go with the flow. If this movie would have been made today, Sarah would be a stoner. I just think Sarah is just so fucking chill. Even the way that Sarah calls Chris on his shit, she doesn't scream at him. She's like, dude,
no,
what the fuck? Why did you do that? Even when she says fuck you, it's not like fuck you. It's just like, hey Chris, fuck you.
Yeah.
You know what Sarah is?
There's no, he's sorry.
She's just like, fuck you. He's sorry.
Right.
Sorry. Let's move on to that, because the amount of times I paused and I've done that, just like with my night cream on, with my retainer in my mouth, just like, sorry. It's just like numerous.
Lightning crash.
I know. The ultimate gay man revenge story. So, the following morning, the other girls see Nancy walking on water with beach sharks and other dead animals littering the shore. In the days that follow, Nancy becomes increasingly devoid of empathy and engages in risky behavior that endangers her life and all the lives of others. Also, the spells the girls cast eventually lead to negative consequences, as Bonnie becomes aggressively narcissistic. Rochelle finds Laura traumatized by her baldness. It just keeps going out. Let's talk about this. Do y'all feel sad for Laura Lizzie?
Yeah, I mean, no. This is the scene also where Rochelle's reflection looks away from her, right? Is that like where, and then you kind of have this moment of like, you feel, well, I don't know if you feel bad for Laura Lizzie, but she clearly feels bad for Laura Lizzie. And I also think she starts to be like, oh, okay, this is about like coming back to me 3 times. Like it's going to be 3 times worse than this. I think she's hearing that right now. And she's going, oh, look, it's quite literally, oh, look, it's the consequences of my own actions. That meme personified.
And the whole reflection thing, it's almost like she's ashamed of herself or afraid to look at herself now after this. Like, ooh, yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I think that Rochelle is a good person. I think that that doesn't excuse that she is being pretty much made victim to somebody's really blatant racism. That's deeply fucked up. But at the same token, like going back to her saying, I don't want to hate other people. Like Laura Lizzie's getting what she put out ×3, but also I think that it goes back to that old saying, when you hold hate for anybody, it's like holding hot coals in your hands and expecting another person to get severely burned. You know, I think that Rochelle, of the 4 of them, I would say the people who were reincarnated the most are probably Sarah and Rochelle, because they seem to have a little bit more depth and knowledge of themselves than the other 2 girls. So I would say that is at least that's my interpretation of what her inner workings were during that moment. So Rochelle finds Laura traumatized by her baldness, and the obsessed Chris attempts to sexually assault Sarah after she rejects his continual advances. Very hard scene to watch.
Did you recognize where this was shot? It was Griffith. Yeah, it's where, I don't know if you've ever done this with me, but it's that backside of Griffith facing towards the valley in Burbank, where she literally runs up a trail that I've run like dozens of times off of that. It's where Jonathan London and I used to turn off of the paved path right there. That's like, I think only service trucks can get up there now. And then that's like the direction up the trail that you run. It was really, I mean, other than just watching a very physically uncomfortable scene, it was kind of weird to be like, oh, and I know exactly where that's happening.
That scene was just harrowing. Also, behind the scenes tidbit, because I listened to the audio commentary for this podcast because I love this shit. Apparently, the scene with Chris and Sarah is the scene where a bunch of Robin Tunney's friends decided to show up on set to watch filming, and I'm like, that's pretty weird, but okay.
I need to look at this.
Kevin, you have to listen. You have to listen to the audio commentary.
Physical media.
You think that's a cool cover?
I love my physical media. Right, that was a win. The new Blu-ray release. The art is fantastic. Yeah,
that's incredible.
Dope.
You know, just a typical.
All right.
Yeah.
To punish.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay.
To punish Chris, Nancy uses a glamour spell to disguise herself as Sarah and attempts to seduce him at a party. She is interrupted by the real Sarah, who pleads with Nancy to leave with her. Upset at being deceived, Chris accuses Nancy of jealousy, not wrong, which angers her. Then she uses her power to kill Chris by throwing him...
Jealous?
You don't even exist!
You don't even exist to me!
This is witchcraft.
I know. It was really intense. It's really intense. I think the scene where you see just her boots dragging on the floor as she moves toward him is so... I want to replicate that.
It's so witchy too. It's like
the boot she has, like the sound. I'm like, girl, you better fucking eat. You better vanquish the source. That was like so fucking dope. I loved it. I was here for it.
Yeah. Right.
You know, like, was it fucked up? Was it fucked up? Yeah, but
did a human die?
Yeah. Do you think that Chris's apology of "I'm sorry" was sincere?
No,
I think it was out of fear. It was a fear thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That dude didn't have one sincere thought this whole movie.
I think that it was definitely interesting. Also, if you look at it from a life having poetry to it, for that to be the end of his life, him getting cornered and ambushed by two women he wronged that turned out to be witches, and one of them like levitating toward him like, fuck you, Chris Hooker. It's just a very like, you know, I thought that was one of my favorite moments of someone's wig getting snatched on media. It kind of, that is his karma. But also I do feel life is complicated. I do feel bad for him.
There's the whole part of being under the spell too. That element is a little askew and makes you feel a little sympathy.
It makes you feel a little sympathy because that wasn't. But then again, the film, if the writing was a little bit more cohesive, I would have understood how I was supposed to feel about Chris. You know, it didn't even. If he would have started opening up about things in his life to Sarah, it's like, no, but I want you to know about me. Like, if there were some more scenes of that,
Right.
and there was like,
There's pieces of the puzzle that aren't quite.
yeah,
It also, and I don't want to like hover on the themes of sexual assault for too long, but if you look at the logistics of how the movie is, it technically says that the sexual assault is her fault because it's because of a spell that she put on him,
And that's
not the way that we want to
we don't want a victim blame.
kind of prop those things up. Yeah, and so
it's
like
super fucked up.
I wish that there was some way of being like the spell is broken and that is when he pursues the unhuman thing that he does. And so I wish that they didn't cross that line under the spell, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it would have been really, really interesting to see that. But
There's more of an icky factor. Yeah.
there's definitely more of an icky factor. Speaking of icky, let's shift focus to Bonnie. I have a hard time believing that both Rochelle and Bonnie would out of fucking nowhere, be like, you know what, fuck you, Sarah. We're turning on. Like, I thought that was so severely underwritten. This is where I think the editing serviced Rachel True's performance more than Neve Campbell's performance. I think that Neve Campbell did a lot of things that, again, weren't a showy performance. Like, if you looked at how she was hunched over with her hair, and if you look at her physicality when Nancy's describing Manon, like, she seems to be the only one of the four girls that's, like, deeply into it. She kind of does this borderline, it's kind of sensuous, the thing that she does with her body. If you look at it, it's like he just takes everything away, and there's this shot of Bonnie just being like, and I found that so interesting. And then when you see the way she acts when she is beautiful and her skin is clear, and just how she
changes her attire is completely different, showing more skin,
just being completely narcissistic. I thought that I completely believed that she would turn on Sarah because she really isn't thinking for herself in that moment, and she doesn't want to be complicit in the demise of her new privilege, her pretty privilege. I think that Rochelle turning on Sarah is a harder pill for me to swallow, because I think for as far as it got for Rochelle to not say anything, I call bullshit. That was too much. What do you both think?
Well, they try and hammer in the, like, you betrayed the coven so Sarah tries to cast a binding spell on Nancy to prevent her from, like, continuing to harness her power. So they use that as the catalyst for her to be like, you betrayed the coven. You know what they do to, like, at this point,
in the old
they
days,
technically, they still, But that's, you know, I mean, if we're going by witch lore, in WandaVision, they were definitely like the same sort of thing. Like, you betrayed us, you got to die now. And so, I mean, I guess if we're going to connect to the witch branches there, but I think that they just try and be like, oh yeah, this is the reason. And they still have their powers at this point. Like, things are still happening for them. So it's not like they have all of their relative faculties together. I don't think any of them are seeing reality in any sort of way, even though they're starting to see the consequences of their own actions. They're also still like, we're trying to harness this power. You're trying to break it from us, so we have to remove you. I get why it's quick, and at this point, we're kind of like diving headfirst into the resolution and the climax of the movie.
If this script were on my desk and I had to put my screenwriter cap on, and if I had to give notes on the script, I would advise the writer to add 3 scenes, because I think it's not that I don't buy this. It's kind of like Daenerys suddenly snapping at the end of Game of Thrones. But how did we get here? Like, not my whole attitude about that, not no. not no baby girl. But if we were to add 3 scenes to the craft, I think there should be a scene where Nancy talks the girls into it. They're just hanging out. And Nancy suddenly is like, so we should fucking kill Sarah. And you just see the other two, like, it could even be funny. They're all shit talking her. It's like, I never liked that bitch anyway. She's fake. She's so stupid. She's corny. Okay, let's kill her. And they just...
Like, wait, what? Have a conversation.
Yeah. And then they're like, oh, yeah, sure.
They're like, wait,
cool.
what?
Sure, cool. And what I also would have done, another scene I would have added a scene of either Rochelle and Bonnie, probably Rochelle, approaching Sarah outside of the other 2 girls, like, yo, look. So some fucked up shit's probably about to happen. I think that you should, like, keep your head down. Could you not do any more binding spells on Nancy? Like, I think that Rochelle would have at least attempted to be like, yo, Sarah, I'm just looking out for you. Could you, like, not do that to Nancy? Because she is getting a little unhinged right now. The fact that we didn't have a scene of Rochelle and Bonnie taking that in, we didn't have a scene of one of the girls attempting to just peacekeep a little bit more. And lastly, I think the scene where Nancy is like, go upstairs and check on her, I think that scene should have been longer. And you know how I think it should have been longer? I think that Rochelle and Bonnie should have been talking behind Nancy's back. And Nancy comes in, it's like, oh, I see what's happening. Go check on her. And Rochelle's finally like, you're fucking doing the most right now. I think the moment, and I'm really skipping ahead, but if people are listening to this podcast, they've seen the movie. I think seeing someone who you claim to be a good friend of yours get their wrist slashed and you just pretended that their family got killed, then they're running upstairs. What human being wouldn't be like, dude, I can't do this? I think even Bonnie's narcissistic ass was like, whoa, you know, so I would have loved to have seen them. I think it even should have happened while they were still floating in the air. You should have slowly seen Bonnie and Rochelle slowly come down to earth in that shot, like, you know, like, I think that would have been interesting. What do you both think?
I like that a lot. I like, you know, adding those dimension and the nuance to the characters, and it would fix a lot of things, make it even so much more an impactful movie.
Yeah. If it were written today, especially with how a lot of things are framed as just underdogs and marginalized groups against the system, this movie would have ended. And I'm jumping ahead, but I think we've covered most of the good plot points. The ending fight scene would have been different. It would have been an intervention. And I think the intervention would have been Nancy goes too far. And when Sarah goes up to her room, Bonnie and Rochelle join her and they're like, we're so sorry. How do we fucking fix this? Maybe they encourage...
Get me medical attention.
Like, and they give their powers back to Sarah. And then Sarah uses that to invoke Manon. And she has her showdown with Nancy. And maybe Nancy and Sarah have a moment like Madeline Pryor and Jean Grey had in the 3rd episode of X-Men 97, where Sarah is just taking Nancy through a bunch of moments. I think a movie written today would have done that, and it would have gone that deeper. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about 1996. What did y'all think of this magical fight scene? What did y'all think of all those snakes?
Well, yeah, first, I mean, the setup is like the trio is invading her dreams and she's tormented by like all of these cockroaches are pouring out of the vents and snakes are growing out of like everything and there's insects everywhere and rats are falling on her shoulders. It's very like, this was the special effects budget. Like all the special effects budget was in this scene, basically, but she has betrayed them. They are overpowering her. We have to get to that moment of it seems like it's all over. It's very like, look to the east on the dawn of the 5th day, like it's always darkest before the dawn sort of thing, where they have to get her to like absolute end point, and that's when she can manifest Manon for herself and sort of fight back and prevent everything from happening. I thought it was, I mean, for a movie done in 1996 that didn't really flex many special effects up until that point, I thought it was really well done. Especially the snakes coming out of Nancy's fingers was super funny. That that was very like Animorphs, if
not Animorphs.
Dig into those old books.
Not plastic books. Get out of here.
I always love the flat clothes. It's like tricky. It's like, and it just sees them like land. It's like, and there's like, yeah. It's just fun. It's fun.
Oh yeah, the kick was epic. Out of all of the magic, she just gives her a fucking drop kick to the chest.
It was like, bitch, you've been tormenting me for half this quarter. Like, I'm just gonna kick you. Also, Nancy definitely could have stabbed her, and all the time it took Sarah to be like,
I know. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, that was the biggest wind up. I haven't seen a wind up to a kick that long since Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It took for fucking ever. The dust is settled. Sarah is the greatest witch in all the land, and we cut to the next day. Sarah's in the back of her father's truck just looking at different stuff. Do. The director said action, but pretend you were doing something else, and the actress was like, oh, I'm busy. Look busy. That's what it was giving, but I still love this movie. Then the two girls come up behind her. They're like, hey girl. And this brings down my rating. I think that this just makes them look like such fucking phonies, and it feels like character assassination for Bonnie and Rochelle to, after all of this, to be so casual and so familiar and say, oh, hey, you knew that was a joke, right? Oh my God. I tell you, if Sarah were black,
funny,
it would have been
just funny.
Very funny. It would have been like world star hip hop, just world star. Jerry. So it would have gone. I'm just saying, I'm not saying it would have been different, but I'm saying it would have been different. So she makes lightning come down and she's like, try Jesus, not me, bitch. And the scene is just, she just flexes on them and she's like, y'all don't want to end up like Nancy. And Nancy's all like, I'm flying. And we cut to black. What do y'all think of this movie?
I agree. That interaction at the end always bothered me. I'm like, something doesn't feel right. I don't like the way that it ended up, and there's a disconnect. Either there had to be a bigger confrontation or an amends or something. It was a little awkward.
It was hella awkward.
But
maybe they were just trying to make them be like, these were just the peons the whole time. Like, these were the pawns. They didn't have much of their, like, they didn't have enough of themselves developed to do anything but follow the most powerful person. So now that Nancy's off the board, maybe they're just trying to, like, although the hyenas technically did turn on Scar by the end of the movie, but very much so like how the henchies always follow the one who has the vibes, the chutzpah. But Sarah was very rightfully like, now get out of here. I have a take about this movie. I talked about this take with Charlie a little bit before the movie, and we're obviously doing spooky month. And this movie has spooky vibes to it, but and Kevin, maybe you agree with me on this, I don't think that this is a horror movie. I walked into it thinking I was getting like a horror movie, and this was actually closer to like, I think I called it something that Charlie was really
Steve,
by. I'll try to remember what movie it was.
I'm going to tell
what did I call it?
I'm telling Kevin. Steve
remember.
Said that Kraft reminded him of Hocus Pocus.
Oh yeah, I thought that it was closer to a Hocus Pocus than it was to like a hardcore like horror movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, it felt more like a Mean Girls but with witchcraft. A sort of like how everything is like Die Hard on a boat. Like, this was like Mean Girls with witches sort of thing, where I was expecting more of like a hardcore, like gory, like horror elements sort of movie, and I was surprised that it felt more like it could be. I wouldn't be surprised if this movie was on like TNT during the Halloween season and stuff like that. I think it's way more starter level scary than I was expecting. So I was just saying I want to show my partner the movie now because it stars women and it's not really that scary. So she'll probably be. But but all that said, that's not to say that I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed this movie immensely. I had a great time watching it. It was very 90s, which I always love anything that's very, very 90s to a fault. And so I had a great time with it.
I never really considered it a horror movie either, but I definitely don't think it's hocus pocus. It's hard to figure out where it fits because it's neither of those extremes.
Right.
But it is...
It's a fantastic teenage movie.
Yeah.
I think it's a great teen movie.
I'm going to play not devil's advocate. I'm going to play Manun's advocate.
There we go.
Full circle. I think if you've experienced a friend breakup, this movie is definitely a scary movie. I'm like, ooh, broken boundaries again. Okay, so if we wanna,
That's fucking.
oh God, it's fun. Oh, whatever. Let me live, BB.
See, I never had the experience, so I'm just like, oh, people, cool, girls, get it.
Can I fire one more takeoff? Why is Neve Campbell in this movie in the character that she's playing? I guess I looked up her IMDb quickly, and I guess it's early in her career, so maybe she didn't have as many choices as she did before. Because did this come out? It came out around the same time as Scream, right before Scream. But like, you're essentially filming those movies around the same time. If they're coming out in the same year, you don't necessarily know that one is hitting before the other. So if we're calling Scream the catalyst point, then maybe it's a little bit before she's more on the radar. But I was very much so, like, especially her talking about how she's hideous or she doesn't want people to look at her. I was very much so reminded of the moment in Barbie where the narrator's like, note to the director, if you're going to have someone talk about how they're not confident in their looks, maybe don't cast Margot fucking Robbie in this role. It's just like, yeah, maybe if you want someone in this role, maybe not Neve Campbell. Maybe not literally one of the most beautiful people from the 90s.
What, though? Steve, I think I've known so many beautiful, sexy men in LA, and I just got to tell you, like, if you don't feel it...
That's fair. I mean, yeah, teenage mind, too.
I mean, not no to your take. Neve Campbell's beautiful, but I think, and again, this is my director hat, I believed her when she said, like, no one will look at me. I also think that if you feel that way about yourself, that's what you give off, and people treat you that way. So I think with her, it was probably this feedback loop.
Confidence is sexy, and
yeah,
that's true. Confidence.
Yeah,
she
didn't have that confidence.
Yeah, that and she dressed like the girl from The Ring, so
yeah,
that didn't help.
Yeah. And honestly, this is like another hot take. I think that for all of Bonnie's like swagger that she developed, I think that for this entire movie, she stayed a virgin, and she didn't like put herself out there. She kind of weirdly gives me an asexual vibe. I don't get like sexuality when she's doing that. I think it's just her voguing and her performing femininity to a certain extent. But it's like when guys start lifting and that becomes their personality. Bonnie is like the guy at the gym who drops her weights and doesn't re-rack. But I could talk about this forever. Going into this, our rating. So Kevin, we rate movies 1 out of 5 something. Do you want to do the honor of picking? For Batman, we do Batarangs. For X-Men, we do Sentinel heads. For The Craft, do you want to come up with what we're going to do 1 out of 5 for? Because I didn't think about it.
Okay. How about...
No pressure.
I know. Like, what's witchy and in the theme? You can do 1 out of 5 invocations of the spirit. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Spirits. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. All right, cool. So let's rate. I'll go last. And as our guest, you go first. Out of 1 out of 5 invocations of the spirit, how many do you give The Craft?
I'm going to give it... I'll do a 4. 4. Because I do think it's entertaining. I do think it's a fun movie. It's definitely of the time, which I love movies of the time that give me the feel of those times, like the 90s feel, especially because that's my time. Yeah, I think the characters are really fun to watch. I love the magic. There are some things that we talked about that could have made it better. So I'm going to give it a 4.
I'm going to evoke 3.5 spirits onto this movie. I definitely enjoyed it. We've already covered the things that were either of the time or not. Hinging on your 90s point, the soundtrack to this movie, so fucking 90s. It's so good.
Song in there.
Anything with Our Lady Peace in it is gonna be A+ in my book. So the 90s vibes are very strong. Probably would visit for the right circumstances. Glad I'd never seen it before. I don't know if we made that very clear. That was my first viewing of The Craft. So enjoyable time. 3.5 spirits are called upon for The Craft.
That's amazing. I'm gonna say, I want to look at it and be objective, but it's such a big part of my life. I can't. It's just I can't. I can't. It holds too much value.
That's
I'm gonna do.
We all have those.
I'm gonna give it 5. I just think that this movie, it's not perfect, but it's perfect to me. Like, it just, I'm seeing it with such rose-colored glasses. This movie brings me.
Okay, Mary J.
Shut
Blige.
up.
Diva.
Diva, go Mary.
That's literally that's a Mary J. Blige. That's a Mary J. Blige line from a J. Cole song. Nobody's perfect, but you're perfect for me.
Thank you so much for coming on, Kevin. That was fantastic. Thank you for
absolutely
listening to us run our mouths.
We did it.
This is lovely.
All right. So before we go, and of course, thank you to Kevin for coming out and joining us on the podcast. You can catch Kevin on the Words of the Witches podcast for everything Charmed extended lore. We got a little sprinkles of the Charmed lore inside of this one today. And then, of course, Solving for X, your general X-Men podcast. We're gonna definitely have to have you back and talk about X-Men at another time. We're just about at time for today, so we are gonna wrap things up for today. But before we go, Kevin, please tell the people where they can find you, your shows, your inevitable social media presence to promote all of said shows. Where can the people find you? And of course, we'll also have all of that information in our show notes.
Cool. Yeah. So everything's on Instagram. So we have the Words of the Witches on Instagram. The Solving for X is a little complicated. It's solvingforx.xmen.tas. Yeah, I don't know. So that's
why we play hyperlinks. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we're on YouTube for the Words of the Witches as well. If you want to follow my personal Instagram, it's KJeezy87, and that's just everything that I do. You know, sometimes I'm singing, sometimes I'm naked, sometimes I'm just posting my cosplays. So yeah, I guess more often than not, it's Cyclops from X-Men. I do that a lot.
Love it.
And I'm going to be doing that at Uncanny Experience coming up. I'm a featured
at Cyclops.
Yes,
please,
yes,
Daddy.
Yes. And I'm also going to be singing at a Merry Mutant musical.
Yes.
Songs of Cyclops for a musical panel there. So
incredible.
I feel like Cyclops' go-to karaoke song would be Eye of the Tiger.
I like it. Yeah, beautiful.
Hey, all right. Well, on that, we can't do anything else. This is how we have to close it after that banger of a joke for sure. A little dad joke to finish it up. Hey, I loved it. I laughed hard. Just give me my dad hat and put it on a little bit tighter. Yeah, I deserve that a little bit. Okay, cool. Well, thank you, Kevin, for coming out. Be sure to check all of his stuff out. Thank you all for listening to us, and for myself, Steve Selnick, and my best. I'm just start calling you my bestie. I don't know why I call you my good friend. You're my bestie. And my bestie, Charlie Peppers. I love you too, buddy. We will look forward to seeing you on the next one. Goodbye, friends.
Bye.